financial update.
Please forgive my informalness, but I'm going to sit down so that I make sure I can follow my notes. All right, tonight's report will summarize the financial activity for the first 4 months of fiscal year 2015, which ended January 31st. This is for the first third of fiscal year 2015, so we're 33% of the way through the fiscal year. Highlighted are those governmental and debt service funds that have had a positive cash flow this first third of the fiscal year. And as you can see at the end of January, the fund balance of the general fund and the debt service fund increased, which is attributable to the collection of property taxes through the end of January. You'll also notice that EDC and CCPD funds have increased due to the strength in sales tax collections. Some of the governmental and debt service funds that have shown a decrease so far this fiscal year in cash balances, as discussed last month, is the car rental fund. This was due to the funding for capital projects made from this fund at the beginning of the new fiscal year. And you'll also notice the decline in Glade Park's Turters Fund, which is due to the revenues that come in over the summer. However, we've already transferred funds for debt service, so it's just a timing issue. Those funds highlighted here represent all the proprietary funds this year so far that have a positive cash flow. Nothing significant. But those proprietary funds that have a negative cash flow so far this year, fiscal year, are highlighted here, and includes the water and wastewater fund. We continue to keep a close eye on this fund with conservative conservation measures, as well as the rainfall, but we're right now seeing the normal seasonal cycle of consumption, and their lack of consumption, therefore lack of revenues. Looking at our internal service funds, the insurance fund has a positive cash flow so far this year due to the timing of claims. And then the equipment replacement fund is starting to purchase some new year capital appropriations, therefore showing a decrease in fund balance, as well as the risk management fund, which we discussed last time we paid the insurance right at the beginning of the fiscal year. So overall, we began this fiscal year with $40.7 million. And after the first third, we have a combined fund balance of $46.2 million in the operating funds. Of course, we also have our capital project funds that ended the 4-month period at $14.4 million, which is an increase of approximately $1 million due to the funding of the 2015 capital projects. Funding on these projects carries over from year to year, and as you know, that will decrease throughout the year as we continue to build those projects. Overall, for some of our largest funds, we begin with the general fund. This chart shows that a majority of the general fund revenues come from sales and property taxes. As of the end of January, the general fund has a collected revenue of $16 million, which is approximately 45% of the budget for this year. Property tax collections are running lower than last year's collections at 73.7% of budget. Last year we were at 79.7% of the budget. This is about $110,000 less. But don't be concerned, because this year the due date was January 31st, which fell on a Saturday. So that next Monday, we received a lot of those that were coming in last minute, and just on that one Monday alone, we collected a little over $1 million. So in fact, February's most currently is up to $2.6 million for February collections, and that pulls that collection rate up to 97.7% of the budget as of this morning. Sales tax collections have been very strong, being 7.7% of our prior year collections. Collections are currently at 33.7% of the budget this year. And you'll see on your detail that it looks like there was actually a decrease of collections for February for sales in December. That is true. We did receive less money than we did last year for the same period. However, it wasn't current period sales. In fact, December is the highest ever for the city of current period sales. There was an audit adjustment that the state comptroller's office had. There were some businesses that were reporting incorrectly, and therefore we got lowered by $209,000. So that was just a one-time kind of deal. So if you see that go down, know that our sales are staying strong. Municipal court revenues this year are running lower than last year, but our building permit revenues are coming in higher than last year, so keeping it pretty good. Am I? No, those still revenues. Here's the expenses. General fund expenditures through January, or 33% of the year, are at $11.1 million, or 28.9% of the budget. Car rental taxes, you've seen a very slight decrease in revenues when compared to prior year. As you can see, the current year are the black bars, but it's less than 1% difference at this point. Within the proprietary funds, the largest fund is the water and wastewater fund. Fiscal year-to-date collections total $6.6 million, which represent 31.8% of the budget. Overall, our expenses at the end of January exceeded prior year, but are right in line at 32.4% of the appropriated budget. And this is a little over $7 million. At Texas Star Golf Course, as of January 31st, the number of rounds exceeded projections by 28 rounds. However, the average dollar collected per round was a little less than expected by $1.11 per round, but this is 63 cents per round better than last month. Operating revenues through the end of January were lower than expected, and this was as well as the operating expenses. After non-operating revenues and expenses taken into consideration, the golf course experienced a net loss of $134,000 for this third of the year. Please note that, of course, this is seasonal activity. Year-to-date revenues at Texas Star Sports Complex, which encompass both Softball World and the Parks at Texas Star, fell short of revenue expectations by $26,000. Expenses at the complex were also held under budget projections, though, by $28,000, which leaves the facility with a net operating gain of $47,000, which is better by $2,000 than expected for this time of year. Have any questions?
So I had mentioned to you that we were down at 6%, and at the time we did not have the detailed information. And so I think, Shane, you said that ended up being a positive 7% if you did not have the audit adjustment in there. So once we get the details,